Okay, let's talk about voxels and voxel resolution. So this week we're going to look at how you can make your models at high res and low res within a voxel grid and what a voxel grid even is. So I'm going to take a stab at explaining the difference between polygon modeling and voxel modeling for people who don't really have a background in 3D. So everything that we're going to talk about in terms of voxels is what you're going to see in Adobe Medium in a few minutes. So polygons are made up of edges, points and faces. It's a very common way of generating a 3D model in the industry. You'll see it in game, film, TV, almost anywhere. Unless we go into the CAD world, which we're not talking about today, it's going to be made up of polygonal models. And the essence of that is that the points in the corners that make up the shapes of the polygon, or the vertices, vertex is one word. I'll put it on the screen because I'm always getting criticized for saying the word vertice. So these points are encoded with a number, so they know where they are in space, in 3D space. So they have an X, Y and Z coordinate, and that coordinate tells that vertice where it is in space. String a few of them together and they all know where they are, and if you've got 3 or more, then the space in between them is called the polygon or polygon face. That's what you get in most programs. So think Maya, 3D Studio Max, even ZBrush works that way for the greater extent. So you'll see it in some sculpting programs as well. But then we have voxels, and voxels are something you're going to see in programs like 3D Coat, and there's a few other programs that use it, but that's where I would see it mostly. And in VR we have Adobe Medium and other programs like Masterpiece VR. So what voxels are, rather than each point knowing where it is in space, the voxel represents a value that's within a grid or a 3-dimensional space. So if you imagine what a pixel is, which is 1 point on a grid, which is your screen, well, voxels are the same, but they've got an extra dimension. So the voxel grid could be a certain size. It could be 512 by 512, which would be 512 times by 512, which is a big number. Or it could be bigger. It could be 1024, or it could be 2048. And the bigger that grid gets, then the more RAM and CPU usage there is. So obviously there is a finite limit to that grid. Now, what that means for you as an Adobe Medium user is you've only got a given amount of space. So let's take a look at what that means for an image or for a sculpt. So let's switch to a 2D, let's switch to a drawing. So you're going to draw your really cool wasp creature in Medium, and you're starting at a given resolution, and you go ahead on that layer and you make your really cool creature and everybody's happy. But at some point you might decide that you want more detail. So you could go up and down the resolution. Now, what that means is, if you go down the resolution, you're not changing the model in any way. What you're actually doing is you're decreasing the size of it within its voxel grid, which means that, like anti-aliasing, it's going to get a little bit more jaggedy because there's less of these cubes or these little voxels to work with. What you might want to do is go the other way. You might want to say, right, I'm going to increase my resolution. And if you increase the resolution, you're going to get a lot more cubes to work with. It's like Minecraft. You're working with, if you work with a really big building in Minecraft, it looks better than it does when it's just 10 cubes. And there you'll see that the resolution is much, much better. And the problem you get sometimes when you're working with Medium is this. You might end up growing too big. So if you're making a world and you go too high resolution, or you merge two models together, you might find that this happens, which is you end up like this, with bits missing. And what that means is you've stepped outside your grid. You've gone too far, and you've increased the resolution to a point where it's now outside the grid and it can't be displayed. One of those layers was doing that. So that's obviously something you've got to always factor in, and you've always got to be aware at roughly what size you're starting at. So I'll just undo that. Now what you can do is you can get some resolution in some areas in a different way. So rather than just going crazy like that, what I'd suggest you do, and what we always say to do, is to split your model down. So if we are going to take a wasp and it's going to have a really cool head, so we'll get rid of that completely and bring it back. And this head needs all of the detail. The body not so much, so we're going to be happy with that. So if I just bring that to the layer above and show you, this one over here, the layer that the head is on in medium, then basically you can just increase the resolution of that head. So what that does then is makes that head really high res. You're on your own layer here in the background, and what would happen then is, let me just bring them together for you. What you then get is the head on one layer that's a given size and the body on another layer that's a given size, but the grid in relation to the other grid is smaller. That has no impact on the view, but what you can see there is that you could have a really high resolution head and a medium resolution body, or even if you're doing worlds and you're doing buildings, keep all your buildings at quite low reses, and the ones that are close to you in the scene have them as a higher res. That is the essence of voxels. What you might do is you might go really low resolution, like I always teach at the very start, and what happens there is you've only got a few cubes to work with, so you're going to get it really blocky. But what it means is the system's not struggling, and you can get all of your shapes out as fast as you can, and the system keeps up with you, and everything works fine. At some point you're going to up the resolution. Now there's no resolution change as such, you're just making it a different size within the voxel grid. So that's what I always recommend. Now one thing this doesn't cover or doesn't help you with is hard surface modeling. Now with hard surface modeling, if you wanted to do something high resolution, so let's say for example we make a cube. So if you make this cube and you want to now chop it up like really hard edges, that's really going to matter what size it is. And realistically, you want to be thinking about being as big as you can within that voxel grid. Now it is going to slow your system down, and it is going to be a lot less fluid and a lot less liquidy as you're sculpting, but that is the resolution that you need to be aware of when you're going for hard surfaces. If you try and do all the chopping and clipping at a really low size, like the one we just looked at, like this or below, then it is going to look very, very blocky because you're very small within the grid. So they're the two things that I want you to be aware of as we launch into just showing the two different types of workflows. The low resolution, as we call it, for blocking out, or high resolution for doing hard surface. So let's dive in and have a look at it inside of Medium. Okay, so let's just prove that point. So I've just sprayed a ball in the air, and you might be used to seeing it like this. And you'll see me working on models like this without any indication of how big you are in the scene. And what I always do if you've watched them in my earlier videos, the first thing I do is I take this sphere and I go to Actions, Decrease. And that's what you're looking at all the time, is me and this ball, or sorry, me working with this ball. But look around the background now. There's the cube. You've probably seen it and not realized what it is. So if you take your grips and just pull them together, we can take a look at the cube really close up now. So I've got all of my other, the scene graph and my other parts of the scene around me. So if I've got only that world to work in there on this layer, I can't spray over here now, I can't do anything over it. I can only work within that grid. So I could bring that grid towards me, I could get a little bit closer like that, and as you can see, I'm still within my grid there. Let's work with it and change the resolution and see what happens. So bear in mind the grid. So pull down on your thumbstick on your non-dominant hands, make sure you're on the correct layer, and go increase, and watch what happens. So the model didn't move at all, but the grid got smaller. Let's do it again. Model didn't move at all, grid got smaller. One again. See how it's taking longer? So this is something you're going to be fighting with all the time. So if I try and move this now, manipulate this, I'll use the move tool now. Watch what happens. Big brush, move it around. And we're waiting, we're waiting, we're waiting. So you can do it, and it's getting to fill that voxel volume, but everything's going to take longer. So you have to be prepared to have things take a lot longer and be a lot more problematic at these kind of scales. You can work this way, and a lot of people work really well. Just be ready to accept that. What happens if you pull outside the grid? Well, let's try it. Hopefully you can predict what's going to happen. Okay, so that's exactly what's happening. You might have seen that. So you must always be working within your grid. You must be working and understanding the grid per layer. So what does that mean? Well, we've already described it, but let's just show you. Okay, so we will add another layer. Make sure that we're back on clay. We're definitely on the second layer. It's called layer 3 here, and we're going to spray. What's happened there? Well, we've got another high resolution layer. We've got one there, high res, another one there, high res. But look where the two are. They're intersecting. So if I take this one and I decrease the layer, see how it's taking a while because it's got all of those voxels to calculate. So I'll move back out now and have a look. Layer 1, grid this size, layer 3, grid this size. I'll go down again, decrease the layer. Watch what's happening. See how it gets quicker because each time it goes down it has less voxels to calculate. And again, watch the grid. See how the grid's getting, basically the model is getting smaller within the grid. And now, and it gets up to the point where you'll see me working most of the time, which is like this. And the reason it looks like I'm just floating in the air and working is because I'm well tiny within that grid. But still over here, we've got this with this grid. So at any given time, you've got to understand per layer what your grid size is. So as I said in the example at the start, if I wanted to do a really high resolution piece, we'd have this, rather than being the body, this could be the head, and this here could be the body. And that would mean, because it's on a much smaller layer, a lot less voxels to calculate, and maybe a lot less detail that we want, well, that would be that resolution, and that would be that resolution. So now we've done that, let's try it with some proper models. File, add mesh as clay. Go to my desktop, find the wasp, and add it. So if that's an okay, we've brought this in as an external mesh, and we can work with that now because it's captured the data quite well. And don't worry about it pixelating there, because it has like an LOD effect, or a level of detail effect. The more you go away, the less it's going to render those voxels. So that's not your model changing, that's just a viewport change. So if it's in the middle like that, I generally look at that as middle ground. That's usually quite okay because it means there's plenty of scope to play with going up or down, and you can generally capture the right amount of data that you want. So let's take this one and let's duplicate it. So I've now got two. And then go negative by double clicking the green button, and we'll basically, on the first one, we'll get rid of the head. This one, sorry, I've got the wrong one there. So I'm just literally removing the head. I could have sliced it, but this is just an easy way to do it. In fact, I will slice the next one just to show you how to do it. So pull down on your non-dominant thumbstick, and we'll go on this one. The tool we can use here is cut, and we'll just cut right through like that. What that's going to do is split all of these parts off, so we can delete that one. We'll move our head out, and that means all of these other parts can be deleted. Delete. There we go. And we've now got a wasp head and a wasp body. So what does that, why is that useful? Remember right to the start. So we've got our head, and we're going to have this very, very highly detailed. So what we might want to do is really work on these mandibles here and work on the eyes and get some detail. And that's where the focus of the modeling is going to be. And even you can see how bad these are, the antenna. Whereas the body, maybe not going to focus on it as much, or you could maybe chop off the wings and do them high res as well. But for this exercise, we're going to leave the body at the level it's at, and we're going to work on the head at a higher level. So let's have a look at zoom out. You see where you are in the voxel grid. So you now know you're on the head, and you're going to increase the resolution. And again, let me zoom in and show you. So that's twice as high now. Look at the voxel grid around it, it's getting smaller. And again, it's getting smaller. And again, now it's really small. The body, still on the big one. Head. So let's now work on that head. So we'll put him back where he was. Just go back to that sphere, make sure we're on continuous, which we are, and now we can just start working with a nice high resolution. And you're getting a nice fidelity on it, because you're not too high, you're not all the way up high yet. So you're not really fighting with the voxels all the time, but you're not too low so as you're seeing how jagged and jaggy it gets. So that's about the middle ground that I like to be for this kind of work. So I'll just do a little bit more. Just define that shape for the eye. Only working on one side here. And we'll sort out these. Let's get rid of these. And we'll sort out some nice antennae. So we'll just use a custom brush for that. I don't know what I've got. Have I got something that could be used for that? Yeah, this will probably do it. So put something like that in there first. Then switch to single. And you can see it's holding the shape much better. Compare it to the other side already. We can even do more mouth parts or more detailed stuff in here if we wanted to. And there you can see now that that's a much higher resolution, and it's the wrong size actually, so let's make it, get it a little bit closer. And even turn it around like this. So there you go. So he's in mid-flight now, maybe if I chop the wings off. And you can see that the details all been put into the area that matters, and the body still on that low resolution. So head, high res, body, low res. And that's it really. That's the essence of how we would go through the breakdown of an organic model, something like this. Now hard surface is totally different, but we'll have a very quick look at that now. So for hard surface then, we need to have high resolution, and I'll explain what that means and why that's an issue. So let's just drop the cube down in the middle. It takes a minute now because we're actually at quite a high resolution. You saw it take a while to come in. So for this kind of modeling, you might work out once you've done this little bit of the tutorial, you'll be able to decide what resolution to start something like this at. So for high resolution hard surface modeling, that might be about the right sort of level. Why do I know? So if I take the red cube, double click the cube and make it red by double clicking the green button and just chip away, you can see I'm getting nice crisp edges. So this is great for doing exactly what I've just said, which is hard surface modeling, or at least hard surface shapes out of a model. You can still use all of your other tools, so you can use move, and you can get organic shapes if you're doing spaceships. Let that one go. See how long it takes to redraw it when you've done a move tool. Notice what's happened there. So we've gone out of the grid already. So you have to really be mindful that that is a possibility while you're doing this kind of high resolution modeling. And you might wonder why you're losing bits of your model. Well, you've just found out, and it's because it's outside that grid. So you could take it and go decrease resolution. And now we've gone down the resolution. We've now got space at the front. Should we not wanted to have lost that front there like that? But we've got the ability now to carry on. And have we lost any of the integrity? Let's just try and remove some of the stuff. No, it's still okay. So we could have actually started that resolution anyway, because it's not had any damage. What happens if we go lower? So we go decrease the res. Takes less time now because there's less voxels to recalculate. Decrease again. Look at the box getting bigger. Take a good look. I think I've got a good colour here for you to see it, so hopefully you can see it a lot better than normal. So that box now, try again. Try again. And look how big it is now. It's tiny in the scene. So this is down to the level where you see me starting with our blockouts. Now what happens if I do this? You'll see very quickly. It's okay, but look up close. It's starting to lose edge integrity. So what that means is the size of the voxel grid now, it's not being able to calculate it as smooth as it did because there aren't the voxels there to work with. Look at this here. This is a great example. See the stepping? That's a good example of how it's trying to triangulate through the voxel grid. You can almost see the voxel grid there because of the way that's rendering. So let me go even lower and you'll see how bad this gets. Decrease again. Look at, you can even see the cubes there. It's showing you a representation. Look how big it is within its grid. It's tiny now. Okay, so we'll go down. I'll go one more and it just gets ridiculous at this point. So let's chop that away. There you go. Now we're losing complete edge integrity now. We're really beginning to see that this isn't going to work. Now this is fine if you're doing organic stuff, because you could do continuous. Say I wanted to do a scene where you're going inside and you're like you're working inside a cave or something like that. That's fine. You can generally get away with that at this level, which means you can do great big scenes where you bury yourself right into the middle and you're digging out. But if you're going to do hard surface, there's a level that you can go down to, and this is probably about it. You'll see that if you're seeing your model, go zoom in and have a look at it like this. And if this is what you're seeing, then you know you're going to have problems. And that is the essence of hard surface. It's understanding the voxel grid. It's not understanding how to manipulate the model. So have a go at that at all levels and try all of the things that I've shown you in this tutorial, and you'll have a great understanding of how, not only how it works with the modeling within inside of Adobe Medium, but it'll also give you an idea of what the limitations of voxel modeling is. One thing to know, when the model comes out of Medium, what the algorithm does is it calculates a mesh from this volume. So it works out based on a number that you put in what the polygons would be needed to make up that model. So it doesn't really cause you any problems when it's high res. If you look at this and go, let me show you, File, Export, and you look here, what you've got is options all the way down from nothing, no triangles at all the way up to a ridiculously large amount, and anywhere in between. And you can click these buttons and just get a 110 or 100. And what that's going to do is it's going to interpolate, it's going to work out, based on the number you give it, how many triangles it's going to take to make that shape. And what you get out then is a geometry model with points, edges and faces. So it converts it on export to that other type of modeling. And that's where people do get confused, because a polygon model is coming out of Adobe Medium, but inside it pretty much most of the time is in this voxel system. So go and have a go at that and see if you can fully understand that, and try the two methods. Try blocking out really low like we are here, and that's when you see me doing it fast, or some of the artists you'll see will do it really fast. And then try it the other way, where we go really high res and we can make spaceships and, you know, all of the hard surface stuff that you want to get into. And again, everywhere in between. So have a good understanding of what that cube means before you move on. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos and you're learning a lot about these VR programs like Adobe Medium. Please give the video a thumbs up, because it does help us get found by other artists. And if you do like what we're doing, then subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and as you know, it's going to give you a notification of when we drop the videos, which is most often on a Wednesday and a Friday.